The following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being with us. I'm joined again by Jeff Perry, both of us from Asset Management Resources, and our guest again is Cozy Wittman. Thanks for being with us, Cozy. Cozy is her firm is College Inside Track. So if you want to learn more and reach out to her, Cozy, tell everyone how they can connect with you if they'd like to reach you, and maybe take a moment to share a little bit about the range of the services you provide.
Sure. So anyone can reach out for free advice. We give free consultations to any family. It's an hour where we sit down together and just chat college about your student. And you can set that up by going out to our website at collegeinsidetrack.com. It's all one word.com. And College Inside Track really helps families navigate the entirety of the college search application and acceptance process. So everything from list building to helping your student define criteria that fits them, high school course selection, the activities, helping them understand what the colleges will be expecting be on their application. So coaching around how to think about the decisions you make in high school. The essay and application process, we do editing for all of the students we work with there, and really guiding them through the financial aid process as well. So we're a comprehensive service end to end, and our goal is to make sure that kids find right fit schools.
Excellent. And we had you on recently talking about fit. And one of the things that is part of that is the financial component of it all. And so that's our focus for our show now. And I wanted to take some time to talk about that whole process. I gather FAFSA time of year is upon us, and there's so much to think about when it comes to this. And I know Jeff and I will both have anecdotes and observations, but how should we start when thinking about this discussion? On the one hand, we hear people say, community college, great way to get some credits, but it's a very different college experience, much more efficient, cost-wise. But is that the right answer for everybody? And yet, the cost of education, I think, what are we at for private schools these days? $80,000, give or take. Kind of crazy numbers, to think, what's that mean? So maybe you can kind of help us start out this conversation. Where should we begin?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to point out is that today, it doesn't make any sense to say, here's the right least expensive path for every single student. It just does not fit the narrative any longer. So I always tell people your least expensive path might be 2 years in transfer to a public institution. It might be starting and finishing at a private institution. It might be a combination of those two. There is no singular right path any longer that says this will be cheaper. I was talking to a family yesterday, classic case. They were me back in the day. I told my kids, I don't care where you go as long as you stay in the state of Minnesota and go to a state school, because I live in Minnesota. And it turned out I was automatically cutting us off from some of the best gifters. And when you look at our three traditional college searches, we have 5 kids, but the first 2 don't count. They were very non-traditional searches. The bottom 3, though, very classic college searches. One of my kids went to an in-state public institution. She went to our flagship school, University of Minnesota. One of my kids went to a private school, and one of my kids went to an out-of-state state school. The most expensive school of those 3 was our local flagship university.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That is surprising.
It's very surprising to people when I say that. The least expensive school on that list was the private school, followed by the out-of-state state school, which was still $6,000 less then our public flagship university, and then our very own University of Minnesota. So I think it's important today to stop thinking about schools as public and private. Public are inexpensive, private are expensive. I want people to kind of wipe that from their brain. And I want them to think about flexibly priced schools and inflexibly priced schools, because there are public and private schools in both of those areas.
Can you describe that a little bit for the listeners?
Yeah, for sure. So let's say a student from Massachusetts wants to go off to University of Michigan. Today, that student will pay every penny of $72,000 to have that experience. The public school is not necessarily cheaper. At the same regard, if that same student wanted to go to Eastern Michigan doesn't charge in-state or out-of-state tuition. Everybody goes for the same price. And so it's not necessarily more expensive to leave your state. Private schools don't do in-state, out-of-state.
Right.
If you want to go off to NYU tipped the scales finally this year. They are $90,000 a year for an education, private school, right?
Wow.
But if you wanted to go to Lehigh is going to bring a whole bunch of merit aid to the table. And what you're going to find is they will probably be very close to your local flagship university from a pricing perspective. And the way that the private schools get themselves there is they have a much broader grouping of things that create a scholarship package than our public institutions, who do tend to base their scholarship dollars on GPAs and test scores today, but not every single one. And that's why it's really challenging for families to navigate this, because the colleges are not transparent around their pricing. They even lack transparency around acceptance. And so it becomes very difficult for families to try and figure out, like, if we look at these schools, then these are going to be less expensive, which is why people tend to go, I'm just going to go to the local public institution, right? Because it just seems easier.
So as the family's building that list, on a previous episode, you talked about, building a list of maybe 6 to 10 schools that you're seriously investigating and adding and deleting them. You're saying don't eliminate a school that may appear expensive.
Yep.
So what are you to do to gain some insight on how flexible those tuitions and expenses might be?
Yeah, this is a good question, Jeff. So the thing that you can start with is the acceptance rate of the school. So acceptance rate drives a lot of behavior on the college's part, because at the end of the day, and we don't think about colleges this way, but colleges are businesses.
Sure.
And when they accept a student, it's a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
And when they give away money, it's a business decision. So if I'm a school that has an acceptance rate of 4, 7, 13, even 23%, I'm not going to give away money. Why would I need to do that, right? I have way more kids applying to me than I need to fill a class, right? Some of our top schools in the country, those Ivies, are getting more than 100,000 applicants, and they have 3,000 to 4,000 spots to fill, tops. Some of those schools are even smaller than that.
Right.
So I think it's really important for people to understand that colleges are businesses, and they are not making heartstrings decisions like parents are, right? They're not like, oh, Johnny is such a cool applicant, though. We've got to give him money, They don't think about it that way. So start with the acceptance rate of the school. The further away from kind of that 20% acceptance that you get, so as you get into 30, 40, and 50% acceptance rates, the better the scholarship dollars become. And the schools are the providers of scholarship. There's no magic chest of scholarships sitting off that you just can't figure out how to tap into.
Yeah, if only you knew where to find them, you'd have this.
Yeah. Exactly. This concept that there are millions of dollars of unclaimed scholarship money is myth. The scholarships sit at the colleges. I think this is also a good time to mention that rigor and selectivity are not the same thing. Rigor is academic, selectivity is marketing, right? A marketing engine drives selectivity. It does not have to do with the rigor level of the college or the programs.
Well, that makes sense.
It's interesting to think about. So tell us a little bit about the different kinds of aid. We think about athletic scholarships as the prominent mindset of how people obtain uh, resources from a school. So you're saying select a school that may be more able to provide some aid. How do they go about making those decisions? Is it purely financial? Is it academic? Is it athletic? What are the drivers for those kind of benefits?
Yeah, so there are two buckets of money available for families who have kids going off to college. One is the need bucket. The need bucket is based off the outcome of the FAFSA, the CSS profile. These are financial aid forms. Some schools use their own forms, or a combination thereof. And it is asset and income driven. The singular largest factor that will determine whether a family qualifies for need-based aid is parent income, not parent assets, which is how people have a tendency to think about
They'll
this.
think their wealth is at greater risk than
Yes.
it actually is.
That's right. So assets in the FAFSA formula are only assessed at 5.64%. Your income, on the other hand, assessed at 47%. So it's the scale isn't even close, right? Those two are way off balance. And I point that out because I get a lot of families who are kind of disgruntled over the fact that they've been saving for college and now they're going to be penalized for it. No, you are not being penalized for that, right? If you have, for instance, a 529 plan, 100% of that money is intended for you to pay for college, but it's still only going to be assessed at 5.64%.
There can be differences with how that works as to who owns the 529 plan. For example, if it's actually owned by the student, it might be treated differently than if it's owned by the parent, but for the benefit of the student or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Parents should own the 529 plan, or even grandparents, because grandparent 529 plans are not assessed on the FAFSA at all. You wouldn't want the student to have those assets. And in fact, student assets are assessed at 4 times the amount that parent assets are.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for assets to hang out in the parents' names. But again, the parent income will be the single largest driver there. So I think it's important for people to know that saving for school is good. Anything that you haven't saved and cannot cash flow, you have to take out debt for. And that debt interest rate and the accumulation of that interest is going to far surpass that little tiny 5.64% assessment, right?
Yeah. So let's come back to talking about that situation, the idea of debt. But FAFSA, CSS, maybe just give a little overview of what these are.
And what comes out of them.
Yeah. So the FAFSA is the primary financial aid form. It is put out by the Department of Education and submitted back to the Department of Education. Your ability to gain need-based aid will be based in 2 layers. So the federal government will make their own determination whether or not a family qualifies for need. There will be many families who do not qualify for need-based aid at the federal level. However, the colleges are going to make their own determination family by family by family. So you could find yourself not need-based at the federal government and totally need-based at some schools. And when you look at your list of schools that are 6 to 10, you might not find yourself need-based at your local public institution and totally need-based at private institutions, which is why for a lot of families, a great college list is made up of a combination of public and private schools, because those private schools find ways to get themselves down into pricing that meets the local public institutions because they have to compete for students, right, at the end of the day. So the FAFSA, when you fill it out, you get a report back. And today it's called the Student Aid Report. It goes to your student, by the way, because technically the FAFSA is the student's FAFSA. Even though the parents should be filling this out, do not let your students fill it out.
That's how the billing works too.
Yeah, exactly. And then today, the outcome of the FAFSA, this is new verbiage this year for the 2024 FAFSA. the terminology, so if you have older students, the terminology expected family contribution is being retired, and the new output is called the student aid index, or on the report, it's going to say SAI, and then it has a number that comes after that, and the number does not look like a dollar figure, but it is. So it might say 030716. That is $30,716. The school then takes that number, they take their sticker price, they subtract that number, and if you have a positive number after that simple math formula, then you have need, and the college will make decisions about whether or not they're going to cover need for you and what percentage they have. And this is a super easy math equation for people. You just have to get a hold of a FAFSA forecast tool and do the math yourself. And then you can pick up the phone, call the financial aid offices at the schools that your student's interested in, and just ask them, what percentage of need does your school cover? And most schools will tell you.
And when they cover that, is that done with essentially grant or scholarship money, or is that done in a different way with borrowing capability?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. The need that they are going to cover will come to the family in the form of a grant, but some schools are super sneaky and they call that money scholarship dollars. So let's talk about the urban legend kid, the kid who got a full ride at Harvard, right? That kid is urban legend, by the way. Those kids don't exist. And when kids get scholarships from Harvard, guess what? That money is need-based money. But they call it a scholarship because they're smart. They figured out that, hey, guess what? Middle and upper middle income class folks don't appreciate that they seem needy. And so we're going to call it a scholarship. And guess what happens when you call need-based money a scholarship? The parents run around and the student run around and they tell all their friends, I got scholarship money from Harvard, right? And then guess what happens? Kids look and go, I'm smarter than that kid. If that kid can get scholarship dollars at Harvard, so can I. And next thing you know, right, somebody else applying to Harvard to get that scholarship money, and then they don't get it because their family makes more money, right? So it's not an accident that the selective schools in the country call their need-based money scholarships. So it can be confusing, and it's important to know. And if you have questions about the money that you get, pick up the phone, call financial aid, and ask them, is this need-based money or merit scholarship dollars? Because need-based money is going to get reassessed every single year. You fill out your FAFSA every year, where an actual scholarship that's a merit scholarship, those do typically last all 4 years.
Isn't it also the case that sometimes schools will present information in a way that's confusing, that it's really creating a loan for the student?
Yeah. So the other thing the FAFSA does for you is give you access to the federal student loan program. So if you're part of your family game plan for paying for colleges to take advantage of the federal loan program, you have to fill out your FAFSA. But when you get financial awards back, it can be very confusing to people. There was a really interesting study done in 2018 that showed just all the variances college to college. There is no one format that the schools have to use to designate their financial awards to families. And so what you'll see are people leaving off the word loan altogether. We've seen where it says unsub fed L. So it's up to you to interpret what on earth that means. What they're trying to tell you is you're getting some unsubsidized federal loan money. But people, my experience has been in talking to people, is they'll say, oh yeah, we filled out our FAFSA, but we didn't get any money. We just got some 55,000 something amount of money. They have no idea how the process actually works and what they're being offered. When you go out and you look at school websites and you go to see like, oh, what's the average cost that someone pays on this campus? Here's the tricky part. When colleges talk about financial aid, they're actually including 3 buckets: the federal need-based aid and their need-based aid, They're including their merit scholarship dollars if they offer that, and they include loans, right? So when you go out to a college website and it says the average student on our campus pays X, it actually isn't telling you anything about what you will actually pay, because I guarantee you your kid is not that exact average student, right? They've taken in averages. Some of the kids on their campus are paying full price and some are paying nothing. And so how is a person to know what that is supposed to look like?
Right. And it's important to know, we could probably do a whole program on different kinds of loans, and, some that are federally based and some that are not. You had mentioned before we started that there might be something worth mentioning to our Massachusetts listeners as it relates to our student loan issues.
Yeah, for sure. So the federal student loan today has pretty significant limitations. It is the exact same amount. So kids who are going off to be freshmen this year are getting access to the exact same amount their parents got access to, right?
Wow.
So back in the day, though, mom and dad had the ability to take that federal loan and basically paid for a year of school. And so they didn't have to go seek out additional loans. Well, that exact same freshman $5,500 is what is available today. It is not covering even tuition at more than 75% of the schools in the country.
Yeah.
So most people, I should say most, many people are going to have to go out and find additional loan money. So that federal loan goes up, $5,500 as a freshman, $6,500 as a sophomore, and then $7,500 junior and senior year. If you need to look at other loan options, high level, here's how I would think about it. The next place to look would be state options. And the state of Massachusetts actually has a crazy good student loan. They actually, I believe, even have a parent option. I could be wrong about that, but you can find the details on your State Department of Higher Education website. Massachusetts loan is actually even available for kids who are coming from other states to go to school in Massachusetts. So it's a pretty good state level loan. Not all states have that ability, and some states only make their loans available to residents who are going to school in that resident state. Some loans, like I live in Minnesota, our loan actually travels with students. So there are schools around the country that will accept the Minnesota Self loan. That's what our loan is called. So people can go out to their own state departments of higher education and look to see if there are state loans available to them. And if your student's going to another state, I would also look at that state's Department of Higher Education to see if there's a loan accessible to you. After the state level loans, and part of the reason the state level loans are good is, one, their interest rates are usually relatively low in the marketplace. They usually have very benign origination fees, so things that are relatively low. And then no shenanigans, because it's run by the state, right? So you won't see kind of varying, fluctuating, oh, hey, I know you're out of school now, so now we're charging twice what your interest rate was while you were in school. If you're going to go the private loan space, and certainly I encourage people to take a look, always look at your own bank or credit union first, because you will probably get more favorable rates. But I can tell you NerdWallet does an evaluation every single year of the student loans in the marketplace, and they do a nice job of kind of doing a star rating. They take into account things like origination fees, shenanigans, and history of the loan, that kind of thing. So I recommend that.
Do you happen to know if MIFA is something like, I think that's a private, that is to say Massachusetts Education Funding, I forget exactly what the A is, but anyway, you get the gist. Is that different from what the state loan that you're referring to is?
I couldn't tell you that, Chris, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it is personally, but in any case, tell us about when it comes to that. It seems to me student loans are pretty easy to obtain for families.
Yeah.
And Jeff and I will tell you about some of the challenges that we've had with families who are struggling to keep up with that. And, I'll just share an anecdote of family where the culture of the family was education is very important. But the challenge has been that as they came into it without savings, so and they're not feeling like they have a lot of capacity to pay some of that expense currently. So it's all going on debt, and I forget what the number, call it $200,000 and growing. Do you know what I mean? And we're maybe halfway through the process with their family. So you get the gist. I mean, this can be burdensome to a point of unsustainable. And when it comes to maybe attainable to get these loans, but can you maintain and keep up? How does it work when a family, in say example like that, the parents are just tapped out? Can kids get that loan themselves without the parents' financial commitment?
Yeah, such a good question. The short answer is no.
Yeah.
The short answer, really, the longer version maybe, is the only loan accessible to families where the student owns the debt by themselves is the federal student loan, and that's it. And that will give that family $27,000 across 4 years, or $31,000 over 5, with those caps that I mentioned each year.
Mm-hmm. And they're modest interest rates by comparison, usually.
Correct, right? So right now the federal loan sits at 5%. A lot of the state of Minnesota loan sits at 6.5%.
Yeah.
However, when you start jumping to things like the federal Parent Plus loan, that one is sitting at 8% right now, right? And it has a 4% origination fee. Right. So before people jump in, and candidly, the story about your family makes me a little heartsick. We're
challenged by how do we help them resolve this?
Yes,
that's going to not be disruptive to the students, and we know that it's problematic to the parents.
Yes. The thing I want people to really understand, though, is there's no reason that family needed to go that path. Right? In the marketplace today, there are so many opportunities to gain money if you open yourself up to other potential, right? So we've had this conversation where acceptance rate or selectivity does not equal rigor. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. You do not have to go to schools you cannot afford in order to help your student get ahead. And so a couple of kind of debt-related guidelines to put into place for your family would include, you don't really want to take out more total across your 4 years than a first-year salary in the student's given field. So if they're going to be a teacher, you probably want to be capping that off at $30,000, $34,000, somewhere in that range, right? Because that's a starting salary today in teaching. If you're going to be an engineer, you have a little bit more bandwidth. The other kind of good guidepost is you don't really, when you think about kind of the back of napkin math that you can do really quick to help your student understand and families understand candidly what the payback's going to look like. For every $10,000 of debt the student takes out, the rough payback on that loan is about $100 a month for 10 years. So if you took out $40,000, $400 a month for your family who's taken out $200,000 of debt, that is a $2,000 a month loan payment.
Right.
Think about the kind of cash you have to be earning to make that payback work.
I'm sorry, I've lost track of time. We've gone long. Cozy, you're just a great resource for information, and thanks for spending so much time with us.
Thank you.
If people need help in thinking about their student and their planning, maybe just give again your contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. People can reach me through a family consultation if they like. If you just head out to our website at College Inside Track, all spelled classically like they're spelled, .com, collegeinsidetrack.com. There's a get free advice right in the middle of the first home screen. And if they click on that, they can schedule some time with me.
Okay, till next time, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR, LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.